The unspoken promise. I promised my mother that my sister would live with us, so shut up and stop crying, or I'll punch you in the teeth, my husband yelled, slapping me. But an hour later, the idiot's legs were shaking, and he ran out of my house when he saw that I, Marina, had come to stay. Marina pushed the door open with her foot, grocery bags in her arms. The hollow thud of the door resonated in the living room, but no one seemed to notice. A smell of stale food hung in the air, mixed with a sickly sweet, cloying perfume that she immediately recognized. Elisa had been there again. She took a deep breath before stepping forward. On the living room table, a plate with food scraps, a half-empty soda bottle, and several crumpled napkins. The sofa was covered in crumbs, and on the floor, a pair of shoes lay as if someone had thrown them carelessly. Marina felt a burning in her chest. She had endured this situation for months, but every time she tried to talk to Andrew, he was indifferent, as if she were the one overreacting. "Andrew," she yelled, dropping the bags on the kitchen counter. No response. She clenched her teeth and walked with determined steps toward the study. She knew exactly where to find him. She pushed the door open without warning. Just as she imagined, Andrew was engrossed in his computer, headphones covering his ears, his gaze fixed on the screen. "Are you going to ignore me now too?" He startled, took off his headphones, and spun his chair toward her, frowning. "What's wrong with you now?" Marina felt something inside her tear at his condescending tone. "What's wrong with me is that I just got home and, once again, I find the mess your sister leaves every time she comes over." Andrew sighed and ran a hand over his face with obvious annoyance. "Not this again. We've talked about this." "No, we haven't. You've made me shut up every time I've tried to tell you how I feel." Marina crossed her arms, trying to contain the rage building in her throat. "Do you know how much I spent at the grocery store today? Do you have any idea how much money I spend every month on food that Elisa devours without even asking? You're that bothered? Just tell me how much it was, and I'll ask my mother to reimburse us." Andrew's words were like a blow. Marina let out an incredulous laugh. "You think this is about money? Then what is it about?" he asked, throwing his hands up in an exasperated gesture. "It's about respect, Andrew. It's about your sister not having the right to come here whenever she pleases, empty the fridge, and leave like this is her summer home. It's about you never being able to set a limit for her." He stood up from the chair, his face tense. "She's my sister. If she needs something, I'm going to help her." Marina felt a sharp pain in her chest. "And what am I to you? Just someone who's here to keep the house in order while your sister lives the high life." Andrew's eyes hardened. "Don't exaggerate. It's not an exaggeration. It's reality." Marina's voice trembled. She took a breath to calm herself. "I'm tired, Andrew. Tired of feeling like my opinion doesn't matter, that you always put her above our relationship." He clenched his jaw. "I don't put her above anything. I just want to help her. Helping her is one thing. Allowing her to do whatever she wants is another." Silence fell between them, tense and heavy. Marina felt a knot in her stomach. She looked into his eyes, hoping he would understand, that he would show at least a little empathy, but all she found was a wall of indifference. "I'll talk to my mother, okay?" he said, lowering his voice as if he were doing her a favor. "I'll tell her that Elisa needs to control herself a little more." Something in Andrew's tone made her tremble with frustration. It wasn't a real promise. It was the typical response to get her to stop bothering him. "That's not enough. What else do you want, Marina? I want you to understand what this means to me. I want you to stop acting like everything is fine when it's clearly not." Andrew shook his head and sat back down in front of the computer. "You always find something to complain about." Marina felt a shiver run down her skin. "Don't say that to me." He didn't respond. He simply put his headphones back on. The rage pressed on her chest like an invisible claw. She stood there, feeling her patience crumble. For the first time in 5 years of marriage, she felt that her home was no longer her home. She went back to the kitchen, picked up the bags, and began to put away the groceries with mechanical movements. In her mind, an idea was beginning to take shape, one she didn't dare to say out loud. Elisa wasn't the problem. The problem was Andrew. Minutes later, Marina placed the last bag on the counter and stood still. Her gaze fixed on the fridge, where only a few items she hadn't bought remained. It wasn't the first time this had happened, but in that instant, the certainty hit her hard. She wasn't at her house. This place, which for years she had tried to build as her sanctuary, had become a shared space where she was the only one who had no voice. She placed her hands on the counter and took a deep breath, trying to control the urge to scream, to break something, to open the study door and shake Andrew until he understood what he was doing to their relationship. She forced herself to calm down and began to put away the groceries, each movement heavier than necessary. The slam of the freezer door, the clinking of jars, the echo of the cabinet closing violently. Nothing changed. She went to the bedroom, took off her shoes, and sat on the edge of the bed. She looked at her reflection in the closet mirror and felt a pang of sadness. The woman staring back at her was not the same one from 5 years ago. There was tiredness in her eyes, a weight in her expression that hadn't been there before. She lay down without changing her clothes. She hadn't spoken more with Andrew. She didn't feel like it. When she woke up, the house was completely silent. She got up, her body heavy, and went to the kitchen. She found a plate with leftover cereal on the table. The day passed in a mechanical routine, cleaning, organizing, preparing something to eat. Andrew barely left his study, only to get coffee and return to his computer screen without even looking at her. The emptiness in the air was suffocating. That night, Marina decided to go to bed early. As she was about to fall asleep, she heard the sound of the front door. A dark premonition settled in her chest. She got out of bed silently and walked to the living room. Elisa was there, as if nothing had happened, sitting on the sofa, her feet on the coffee table, her phone held high as she watched videos at full volume. Marina felt her blood boil. "What are you doing here, Elisa?" Elisa didn't even turn her head. "My brother said I could come whenever I want." Marina walked into the living room with slow steps, controlling the tension in her body. "And you thought it was a good idea to come at this hour without even a heads up?" Elisa lowered her phone and looked at her with a mocking smile. "I don't see what the problem is." Marina was silent for a few seconds. She observed the young woman, the look of smugness on her face, the air of defiance in her posture. "The problem is that this isn't your house." Elisa let out a short laugh. "If my brother lets me stay, then yes, it is." Marina felt a chill run through her body. Something about the way she said it unsettled her. The certainty in her voice, as if she knew her brother would always be on her side no matter what she did. "No, it's not. I think that's for him to decide." Marina clenched her fists. "You have to leave." "I'm not leaving." Marina's pulse quickened. "Want to bet?" The sound of the study door opening interrupted the tension. Andrew appeared with a look of annoyance. "What's going on?" Elisa turned with an innocent expression. "Marina wants to kick me out." Andrew frowned and looked at his wife. "Not this again." Marina's stomach churned. "Not this again? Are you telling me this is my fault?" "I'm telling you you're overreacting." Elisa watched the scene with a barely contained smile. "She doesn't have to leave," Andrew continued without even considering it. "There's nothing wrong with her staying." Marina felt a burning sensation in her eyes. "Of course, because you never see anything wrong with what she does." "See," Elisa said as if this were all a game. "She's always attacking me." Marina clenched her jaw tightly. "Why do you come into my house like it's your own?" "Yours." Andrew interrupted. "Since when is this only yours?" The silence that followed those words was deafening. Marina felt the air become thick, heavy. Andrew looked at her harshly, as if he really thought she had no right to set rules in her own house. "If you think this place isn't mine, then I don't know what we're doing here." Andrew looked away as if to avoid the confrontation. "Don't be so dramatic." Marina felt a pang of rage so intense she trembled. "Is that all you have to say?" He sighed, tired, as if he were putting up with something annoying instead of listening to his wife. "Look, let's make this easy. She'll stay the night, and we'll talk tomorrow." Elisa smiled triumphantly. "I'm going to sleep in the guest room." Marina felt the ground shift beneath her. The guest room was her study. "Well, now it's my room for tonight," Elisa said indifferently. "I don't think you'll mind so much." Marina clenched her fists but said nothing. She turned and went to her room, closing the door harder than necessary. She sat on the bed and felt her body collapse. A slight tremor ran through her hands. This had not been a misunderstanding. This had not been an overreaction on her part. Elisa not only disrespected her, but enjoyed challenging her. And worst of all, Andrew allowed it. This wasn't just one more night. This wasn't going to stop. Not until she made a decision. Marina woke up with the feeling that something was out of place. It wasn't the sound of the alarm clock or the morning light filtering through the window that woke her up. It was the emptiness, a strange, uncomfortable, almost unnatural silence. She sat up in bed, her body tense. She didn't hear the TV in the living room, the sound of the coffee maker, or Andrew's footsteps moving around the house as usual. She got up with her stomach churning. She walked to the door and opened it cautiously, as if by doing so she were venturing into unknown territory. From the entrance of the room, she saw the dining table. It was filled with dirty dishes, food scraps, and crumpled napkins. A spilled glass of juice had dried on the wooden surface, leaving a sticky stain. Fury ignited inside her with alarming speed. She walked down the hallway with firm steps and looked into the living room. Elisa was stretched out on the sofa, one leg hanging off, phone in hand, scrolling through posts with an expression of absolute nonchalance. She was wearing one of Andrew's old t-shirts, and her messy hair fell over the cushions as if the house were hers and not someone else's. Marina felt her jaw tighten. She crossed her arms and took a deep breath, trying not to give in to her anger. "Aren't you going to clean up your mess?" Elisa didn't even look up from her phone. "I'll do it later. You've been saying that since you started coming here." "So what?" Elisa squinted. "It's not a hotel. What do you care? I'm not bothering you." Marina felt her patience hanging by a thread. "You have 2 minutes to clean the table, Elisa." Elisa finally looked up. She smiled mockingly. "And if I don't, what are you going to do?" Marina's heart pounded. Elisa was challenging her, not with loud words or shouting, but with a poisonous passivity, with the attitude of someone who knows she has the upper hand. Marina felt the urge to snatch the phone and smash it against the floor. Her body trembled not just with rage, but with a contained anguish that had grown too big in recent months. "Where's your brother?" Elisa shrugged. "He went out." "Where to?" "I don't know." Marina felt a pressure in her chest. "Why can't you answer my questions clearly?" "Because I don't have to give you explanations." Elisa's words were like a slap. Marina felt the urge to scream, but instead, she closed her eyes and exhaled slowly. "Clean the table." "I don't want to." Marina opened her eyes and stared at the girl. Something inside her broke. "If you don't clean the table right now, I'm going to grab your things and throw them out the window." The silence that followed those words was almost unreal. Elisa stared at her, phone still in hand. Marina didn't look away. Her body was tense, her heart pounding, but she wasn't going to back down. For the first time, Elisa seemed to hesitate. "You wouldn't do that." "Try me." Elisa narrowed her eyes, but this time there was no mockery in her expression. There was something else, something dark. "You're a miserable person. And you're a parasite." Elisa's phone trembled slightly in her hand. For a moment, Marina felt the young woman was going to get up and do something, but all she did was let out a sigh of annoyance and get up. "God, you're so intense." Marina didn't respond. She just watched her in silence as she reluctantly took the dishes to the kitchen. She threw them into the sink with force and turned on the water with abrupt movements. Marina turned and walked to the bedroom. She closed the door behind her and leaned her head against the wood. It wasn't just rage anymore, it was something deeper, a sense of danger, loss, and emptiness. She wasn't losing control of her house. She was losing control of her own life. She stayed in that position for several minutes, her breathing ragged. After a while, she went to her closet and took out a suitcase. She didn't fill it. She just left it on the bed. She sat down in front of it and stared at it. A part of her knew what it meant. It wasn't just an impulsive reaction, it was a warning. She wasn't going to stay much longer, not if things continued like this. The sound of the front door opening pulled her from her thoughts. She left the room and saw Andrew enter with a tired expression. He was carrying a bag in his hand, probably with some food. Elisa was still in the kitchen, but now she had her headphones on, as if she cared as little about what was happening around her as she did about the mess on the floor. Marina crossed her arms and looked at her husband. "Where were you?" Andrew put the bag on the table. "I went for a walk." "A walk?" "Yeah. I needed to clear my head." Marina felt a strange sensation in her stomach. "You didn't tell me you were leaving." "I didn't think it was important." The response left her breathless. "You can't just leave without telling me anything." "I don't see why not." The silence that followed was so thick you could feel it in the air. Elisa, with her headphones on, smiled without anyone noticing. Marina felt something inside her completely break. That house that had once been her sanctuary no longer belonged to her. And worst of all, she was realizing it too late. The echo of Andrew's words still hung in the room when Marina felt the urge to laugh, not out of amusement, but because of the absurdity of the situation. Her husband left without warning, came back as if nothing happened, and when she asked for an explanation, his answer was a simple, "I didn't think it was important," as if their marriage had been reduced to a forced coexistence between two strangers. As if she were nothing more than a shadow in the house they shared. Elisa was still in the kitchen with her headphones on, but Marina noticed the slight curve at the corner of her lips. She didn't need to say anything. Her expression spoke for itself. Something inside Marina stirred. It wasn't rage or frustration. It was something much deeper, a cold, cutting suspicion that ran through her body. She walked to the table calmly. She looked at Andrew, who was taking a container out of the bag with the same indifference he had shown minutes before. "You really don't see what's happening?" Andrew looked up, confused. "What? What's going on? What she's doing?" Elisa looked up from her phone and stared at her with feigned innocence. "Me? What did I do now?" Marina didn't answer her right away. She watched her in silence. There had to be something more behind that attitude. That arrogance wasn't normal. "I think you're overreacting," Andrew intervened, taking out a couple of plates. "Elisa isn't doing anything wrong." Marina let out a dry laugh. "You really believe that?" "Yes, I do," he replied without hesitation. "You've been acting like she's the problem, but the problem is that you can't stand her." Marina felt a chill run down her arms. "Is that what you think?" Andrew looked her in the eyes. "Yes." In that instant, she knew. It didn't matter how many times she tried to explain what was happening. It didn't matter if she showed him every moment in which Elisa had challenged her, if she described the way Elisa looked at her when he wasn't watching, if she told him about the small gestures of contempt, the mocking smiles, the passive-aggressive comments. None of that would change anything because Andrew was never going to see his sister for who she really was. "You know what? Fine." Marina turned without saying anything else and walked to her room. She closed the door and leaned her forehead against the wood. She wasn't going to win this fight, not while he kept his eyes closed. She turned and looked at the suitcase on the bed. The idea of leaving was gaining more strength in her mind. But not yet. Not before she truly understood what was happening. Because something didn't add up. If Elisa were just a spoiled, selfish young woman, her attitude would make sense. But there was something more. Something in the way she looked at her, in the way she smiled every time Marina and Andrew argued. That wasn't the attitude of someone who was simply taking advantage of the situation. That was the attitude of someone who was enjoying it. She sat on the bed and grabbed her phone. She opened her social media and looked for Elisa's profile. It didn't take long to find it. The first image she saw gave her a chill. It was a photo taken in her own house. The sofa, the coffee table, the lamp in the background. Elisa was smiling in the picture, her head tilted, with an expression of smugness. The caption below the photo made her stomach churn. "If you keep acting like this place is yours, in the end it will be." Marina's heart pounded. She moved to the next post. It was a story, a short video where Elisa was talking to someone off camera. "I told him that in less than a month, I'd get her out of here. You'll see. I just have to make her explode and my brother will send her packing." Marina felt a pressure in her chest. She moved to the next video. In this one, Elisa was sitting on the sofa, laughing. "The woman is a joke. She thinks she owns the house, but she doesn't even know how easy it is to manipulate my brother. I just have to tell him Marina is treating me badly, and boom, he's on my side without a second thought." The air became unbreathable. Every video, every post, every phrase made it clearer what was happening. It wasn't that Elisa was invading her house on a whim. It was something much worse. She was intentionally destroying her marriage. Marina's hands were trembling as she scrolled further down the profile. Messages with friends, private conversations. "I swear if you saw her in person, I don't know how my brother could marry someone so boring." The other day she started crying. "It was so funny. I'm almost there. Just a little more." Marina put the phone down on the bed. Her heart was pounding. Everything had been planned. Every argument, every comment from Andrew minimizing her complaints, every time he had made her feel like she was overreacting. Elisa had done it on purpose, and he had fallen for the game. Marina felt nauseous. She got up and left the room with the phone in her hand. Andrew was in the kitchen, eating. Elisa was still in the living room, looking at her screen. Marina approached without saying anything and placed the phone in front of her husband. "Read this." Andrew frowned. "What is it?" "Your sister's profile." He looked at her, then at the phone. He unlocked the screen and began to read. The room was filled with a thick silence. Elisa looked up and smiled mockingly. "What?" Marina felt her skin crawl. Andrew still said nothing. "And tell me this is a lie," Marina whispered. "Tell me you weren't an idiot enough to let her." Andrew blinked. "I don't understand." Elisa laughed. "There's nothing to understand." Marina looked at her with fury. "Why did you do it?" Elisa shrugged. "Because I could." The air was cut short. Andrew put the phone down on the table. "Elisa, tell me this isn't true." She smiled. What's true is that she hates me, and now she's trying to turn you against me. That doesn't answer the question, Marina said in a chilling voice. Elisa stared at her. Something in her eyes darkened. The house feels better without her here. Marina felt her entire body tense. Andrew still didn't react. Do you have anything to say? Marina asked him. He looked at her, then at his sister. He ran a hand over his face. I don't know what to think. Marina let out a humorless laugh. You don't know what to think after reading all that? Andrew looked at the phone, then at Elisa. She was still smiling. What do you want me to do? He asked. Marina felt something inside her die. She turned and walked to her room. She took the suitcase from the bed and began to fill it. She wasn't going to wait any longer. Not with someone who couldn't even see what was right in front of his eyes. Marina folded a blouse with trembling hands. The fabric slipped between her fingers, a reflection of what her life had become. Something fragile, something that was falling apart despite her efforts to hold it together. Her suitcase was on the bed, still half empty, but every piece of clothing she packed was a step further from that house, from that marriage that had become a battlefield where she was the only one fighting. She didn't hear footsteps, but she felt Andrew's presence behind her. She didn't look up, she had no strength. Are you really going to do this? His voice was tired, more defeated than angry. Marina closed her eyes and took a breath before speaking. I'm not the one doing it, Andrew. You are. I'm not kicking you out. You're letting someone else do it for you. The silence that fell between them was oppressive. Marina finished putting away the blouse and took a jacket from the closet. Andrew leaned against the doorframe, his arms crossed. This is ridiculous. Ridiculous? Marina let out a dry laugh. She turned to face him. You know what's ridiculous? That after I showed you everything your sister has done, after I proved how she's manipulated everything that's happened in this house, you're still standing here looking at me as if I'm the problem. Andrew looked away. Elisa is complicated. Marina felt a pang of frustration so strong that her vision blurred for a moment. No, she's not complicated. She's cruel, and you've let her play you like a puppet. She's my sister. And what am I? The question hung in the air. Marina felt a knot in her throat as she saw the empty expression on Andrew's face. I'm your wife. Or at least I was. Andrew opened his mouth as if to say something but closed it immediately. His hands clenched into fists. I don't want this to end like this. You chose for it to end like this. That's not true. Marina put the jacket on the bed and crossed her arms. If it's not true, then tell me one thing, Andrew. Just one. Who is your priority? The expression on Andrew's face changed. That's not fair. I'm not asking for fairness. I'm asking for clarity. You can't ask me to choose between my wife and my sister. Marina felt her heart break a little more. I'm not asking you to choose. I just want you to say it out loud. Andrew clenched his jaw. This isn't that simple. Yes, it is. He looked down, unable to hold her gaze. Marina felt her chest tighten. There, she whispered. What? I have my answer. She turned and closed the suitcase. Marina, don't. Don't say my name. Don't make it sound like you care when you never cared enough. The sound of the bedroom door opening interrupted them. Elisa leaned against the doorframe with a twisted smile on her lips. Are you leaving already? Marina looked at her with a mix of hatred and contempt. I hope you're proud. I am, Elisa replied without a hint of shame. I thought it would take longer to make you snap. Andrew looked at his sister with a frown. Elisa, shut up. Why? In the end, what you wanted was for her to leave, wasn't it? Marina felt her pulse quicken. Is that what you wanted, Andrew? He shook his head, but the doubt on his face made her feel an unbearable coldness. Elisa smiled wider. Come on, brother, don't act innocent. You knew it from the beginning. You wanted this from the beginning. You just needed an excuse. Andrew opened his mouth, but said nothing. Marina felt her body trembling. God! She picked up the suitcase without saying anything else and walked toward the door. Marina, wait. No. No more waiting. No more excuses. She walked through the living room with firm steps and headed for the front door. Elisa watched her with pure amusement. Close the door on your way out. Marina didn't respond. She turned the doorknob and walked out without looking back. The cold of the street hit her full force, but she didn't care. She stood still for a few seconds, feeling the weight in her chest become lighter, but the emptiness inside her grew. She had no plan. She didn't know what she would do next. She only knew one thing. She would never go back to that house, and she would never be the woman she had been in there. Marina felt the air grow heavy as she walked down the street. Her suitcase rolled behind her with a sound that mixed with her thoughts. She had no destination. She had no plan. She only knew she couldn't stay in that place for another minute. The night's cold clung to her skin, but she didn't feel it. Her mind only replayed the image of Andrew, the way he had looked at her, the way his silence had crushed her more than any words. The house where she had lived, where she had built her marriage, was now just a place where she didn't belong. She felt her phone vibrate in her pocket. She took it out with trembling hands, a small hope burning inside her. But when she saw the screen, her heart sank. It wasn't Andrew. It was Carla. She answered without saying anything. "Where are you?" Her friend's voice sounded alert, worried. "I don't know. Are you still near your house?" Marina looked around, vaguely recognizing the streets but unable to place herself completely. "I think so. Stay there. I'm coming to get you. I don't want to be a bother." "Marina, shut up. Stay where you are." The call ended before she could respond. She put the phone away and collapsed onto a bench. Her body felt light, as if she were just a ghost of herself. Minutes later, she heard the sound of a car stopping beside her. She looked up and saw Carla jump out. Her friend looked her up and down, her eyes full of questions. "Get in." Marina didn't argue. She grabbed her suitcase and let herself be guided to the car. The drive was silent, broken only by the sound of the city passing by. Carla broke the silence when they were near her apartment. "Tell me the truth. Why did you put up with it for so long?" Marina looked away. "Because I loved him." "No, Marina. You didn't love him. You loved the idea that one day he would love you the way you wanted him to." The words cut through her like a knife. Carla sighed and parked the car. "Let's go upstairs." Marina followed her without arguing. When they entered the apartment, Carla led her to the sofa and put a blanket over her. "Sleep. We'll talk tomorrow." Marina nodded, her eyes heavy. When she was alone, she closed her eyes. The exhaustion consumed her. She didn't know how much time passed until the sound of the phone woke her up. She blinked with difficulty and saw Andrew's name on the screen. Her heart pounded. She clenched her teeth and answered. "What do you want?" Her voice was hoarse, as if it didn't belong to her. "Where are you?" "It's not your problem." "Marina, come back." The laugh that escaped her lips had no humor. "For what?" "To keep seeing myself become a stranger in my own house." There was a silence on the line. "I don't want this to end like this." "You decided how it ended." Andrew's voice changed. Something in his tone became tense, dangerous. "I gave my word to my mother that my sister would live with us. So shut up and stop complaining, or I'll punch you in the teeth." The air in the room became unreal. The world stopped moving. Marina felt a coldness creeping up her skin, a slow tremor, a fear that was mixed with something deeper. She said nothing. She just hung up the call. Her hands were trembling as she put the phone on the table. The silence in the room became unbearable. She put a hand to her mouth and felt her own ragged breathing. She had never been afraid of Andrew until now. Not because of the words, but because of the certainty that he meant them, because of the voice in which he said them. Marina felt the world crumbling around her. There were no more excuses. No more doubts. What was once love had rotted into something unrecognizable. And for the first time, she felt a strange relief in knowing that she had left. Because if she had stayed, maybe she would have discovered how far Andrew was willing to go. Marina stayed in the darkness of the room with her eyes open, staring at the ceiling without really seeing it. Andrew's voice still echoed in her head, each word stabbing her like a shard of glass. Her body trembled, not from cold but from something deeper, something she hadn't felt in years. She put a hand to her throat and tried to swallow, but the feeling of oppression wouldn't disappear. Her breathing was uneven, choppy. She felt as if something invisible was crushing her. She curled up on the sofa and closed her eyes tightly, as if she could banish her own mind. But then memory seized her. She was a little girl again. She saw herself sitting at the kitchen table of her childhood home, her legs dangling from the chair, her hands clenched in her lap. She heard the clinking of silverware against plates, the murmur of the television in the living room. Everything seemed calm, but she knew it wasn't. Her father was sitting on the other side of the table, looking at her without saying anything, his jaw tense, his knuckles white on the table. "What did you say?" His voice was a threatening whisper. Marina wanted to answer, but her voice wouldn't come out. "I asked you a question." She pressed her lips together. The next thing happened in an instant. The sound of the slap, her plate falling to the floor, the chair wobbling under her weight, the pain in her cheek, the world spinning. Her mother didn't say anything. She just stayed there, her eyes fixed on the wall, as if looking away would make everything disappear. Marina blinked and returned to the present. She was talking, She hugged herself and took a deep breath. It had been so long since she had last thought about her father, about that house, about those years of silent terror. She thought she had left it behind, that it was something buried, forgotten. But now she saw it clearly. It had never disappeared. It had only been waiting in the shadows, waiting for the perfect moment to trap her again. And that moment had come with Andrew. She had spent her life avoiding men like her father, or so she thought. She believed Andrew was different, that he was safe. But in the end, she ended up exactly where she started. No, worse. Because as a child she had no choice. But this time she had walked into the storm herself, and now she was paying the price. She felt small. So small. The sound of the room door opening pulled her out of her spiral. Carla came in with a cup in her hand and frowned when she saw her. God, Marina, what's wrong? Marina touched her face and felt the tears. She hadn't even realized she was crying. Carla put the cup on the table and sat beside her, putting an arm around her shoulders. Tell me what's going on in your head right now. Marina closed her eyes. I don't know how to explain it. Try. She swallowed. I feel small. Carla looked at her, confused. Small. Marina nodded. As if I'm a little girl again. As if all of this is bigger than me. Carla watched her in silence for a few seconds before speaking. Your father. Marina clenched her jaw. I always thought I had escaped him. But you found someone else just like him. Marina let out a choked sob. Carla hugged her tighter. And you're not small, Marina. He made you feel that way, and now Andrew too. But you're not. I don't know how to stop feeling it. Carla pulled back a little to look her in the eyes. You will. But it's going to take time. Marina nodded slowly, although she wasn't sure she believed it. Carla sighed. You want me to tell you what I think? Tell me. I think all of this has given you an opportunity. Marina looked at her in disbelief. An opportunity? Yes. The opportunity to break the cycle. To get out of this before it gets even darker. Marina felt her hands trembling. I'm scared. Carla took her hands in hers. I know. But I'm here. And you're not going to go through this alone again. Marina lowered her gaze. I don't know who I am without him. You are Marina, and you're going to discover what that means without a man who makes you feel small. Marina let out a shaky sigh and rested her head on Carla's shoulder. Maybe for the first time in a long time, she wasn't completely alone. Marina stayed awake all night. The weight of the conversation with Carla had left her exhausted, but sleep didn't come. Every time she closed her eyes, her mind returned to that moment, to the tone of Andrew's voice, to the threat that had come out of his mouth with terrifying ease. She got up from the sofa when the first light of day came through the window. Carla was still asleep in her room, but Marina couldn't stay still. Her body vibrated with an energy she didn't know how to contain. She opened her suitcase and took out some clothes. She dressed slowly, as if each movement were a decision she needed to think about carefully. She knew what she had to do. She had to face Andrew. Not because she believed she could change him. Not because she had any hope of getting anything back. She had to look him in the eyes and tell him that it was all over, that she was never coming back, that he had no right over her. She knew Carla would try to stop her if she found out what she was planning to do, so she took her phone and left her a message. I'm going to talk to Andrew. I need to close this. See you later. She left the apartment without making a sound. The walk to her old house was shorter than she expected. Her steps took her there automatically, as if her body remembered the route even when her mind screamed at her to stop. When she arrived, she felt a shiver run down her skin. The door was the same, the facade immutable, but everything felt different, as if the building rejected her, as if it knew she no longer belonged to it. She took a deep breath and rang the doorbell. Several seconds passed before the door opened. Andrew appeared in the doorway, his face haggard, as if he hadn't slept either. At first, his expression was one of surprise, but as soon as he saw her clearly, it transformed into something darker. What are you doing here? Marina stood her ground. I need to talk to you. He frowned. There's nothing to talk about. Yes, there is. Andrew looked at her in silence for a few seconds before taking a step back and letting her in. The inside of the house smelled different, as if the air had stagnated without her presence. Everything was a mess. The table was full of dirty dishes. The living room cushions were out of place. Marina crossed her arms and looked at him. I'm not coming back. Andrew blinked, as if he didn't understand what he had just heard. What? This is over. Our marriage. Our story. There's nothing more between us. The tension in Andrew's body became visible. You came all the way here just to tell me that? Yes. He let out a dry laugh. You're acting crazy. Marina felt a chill run down her back, but she didn't let him intimidate her. I don't care what you think. I just wanted you to know. And now what? Are you going to pretend we never existed? I'm going to move on with my life without you. Andrew's eyes darkened. You can't decide that. Yes, I can. He took a step toward her, his presence suddenly larger, more threatening. You're not going anywhere. You can't stop me. Oh yeah. Before she could react, she felt the blow. Andrew's fist hit her cheek with brutal force, sending her staggering backward. Marina lost her balance and fell to the floor, her breathing ragged. A buzzing filled her ears. The room seemed to spin around her. From the hallway, a figure appeared. Elisa. The young woman stared at the scene for a moment, then shrugged and turned away as if nothing had happened. Marina felt a fury ignite inside her. The blow hurt, her skin burned. But what hurt most was the indifference. She got up on trembling legs. Andrew was looking at her, his breathing heavy, his fists still clenched. Marina felt a primitive fear. She knew what was coming next. He wasn't going to stop at one punch. She ran. She went out the door without looking back, feeling her heartbeat in her throat. She heard Andrew's footsteps behind her, his voice shouting her name, but she didn't stop. Her legs moved faster than they ever had. She didn't allow herself to fall. She didn't allow herself to doubt. She needed to get to the police station. She passed people on the street, but no one intervened. Her heart was pounding so hard she felt it would burst out of her chest. When she finally saw the police station, she felt such great relief that tears filled her eyes. She went inside without stopping and leaned against the counter, her chest heaving uncontrollably. An officer approached her immediately. Are you okay? Marina looked at him and nodded with difficulty. I need to file a report. The officer took her to an office. Marina spoke. She said everything. Every word came out like a stab, but she didn't stop. When she finished, they had her sign the report and requested a restraining order. She had done it. She had freed herself. But then, when she was alone in the waiting room, she felt something that made her shrink. She felt small. So small. She took out her phone and called Carla. Where are you? Her friend asked instantly. At the police station. There was a silence. I'm coming. Stay there. Marina waited, her hands trembling. When Carla arrived, she hugged her so tightly that for a moment, Marina felt she would break. You did it, Carla whispered. Marina closed her eyes. Yes. But she didn't feel brave. She felt like that little girl she had once been, the one who would shrink when her father raised his voice, the one who had sworn to herself she would never be in that position again. And yet there she was. Carla held her face and forced her to look at her. You're not small, Marina. Not anymore. Marina swallowed. How do I stop feeling it? Carla took her hand. One step at a time. Marina took a deep breath. She looked at her hand, the marked skin, the trace of the blow still throbbing on her cheek. It wasn't going to be easy, but she wasn't running anymore. And for the first time in a long time, she knew she was in control. Marina left the police station with Carla by her side. The restraining order was in process, and the report had already been filed. What had happened with Andrew was no longer a private matter. Now it was something legal, something irreversible. The night's cold enveloped her as they walked to Carla's car. Each step she took felt heavier, as if reality were falling on her in waves. She sat in the passenger seat and closed her eyes. Her head was spinning, but there was a clarity in her chest she had never felt before. She was free. Not completely, not yet, but she had taken the biggest step. She had promised herself, and this time she hadn't backed down. You're going to need a lawyer. Carla looked at her out of the corner of her eye as she started the car. I know, and I know someone. Marina nodded. She had no idea how a divorce worked, how long it would take, how many more fights she would have to face before she saw Andrew for the last time. But she was ready. She wasn't going to hesitate anymore. That same morning, Carla took her to a trusted lawyer. His name was Javier, and he had a face weathered by experience. He didn't ask too many questions. He just took notes and explained how the divorce would proceed. Marina signed the papers with firm hands, feeling each stroke of her signature as a definitive line between her past and her future. The process was harder than she expected. When Andrew received the divorce notification, he flatly refused. He called Marina repeatedly, left messages, and showed up at her old house despite the restraining order. I'm not signing anything, he said in one of his calls, his voice rough and full of anger. If you want a divorce, you're going to have to fight for it. Marina hung up without responding. She had nothing left to discuss with him. The weeks passed, filled with meetings with the lawyer, documents to review, and nights when insomnia visited her without mercy. The restraining order didn't stop Andrew from finding ways to make her life difficult. He showed up at her job, tried to manipulate her through their mutual friends, and even sent messages to her family to intercede for him. But Marina was no longer the same. The day of the hearing arrived faster than she had imagined. She walked into the courtroom with her head held high, feeling the stares on her. Carla accompanied her, but remained in the waiting room while Marina and her lawyer walked inside. When she saw him, she felt a pang in her chest. Andrew was sitting on the other side of the room, with his own lawyer by his side. He looked thinner, with dark circles under his eyes, but his expression was the same, defiant, as if he still believed he could win. She didn't look at him for more than a second. The judge entered, and the procedure began. Marina's lawyer laid out the facts with precision. He presented the report, the restraining order, and the testimonies of Carla and other witnesses who had seen Andrew's verbal aggressions in the past. When it was Andrew's turn, his lawyer tried to minimize the facts. My client denies that he used violence against the plaintiff. He admits there was a heated argument, but insists that his words were misinterpreted. The judge looked up from the file. Are you suggesting that Ms. Marina lied in her report? Andrew's lawyer hesitated for a moment. We are only saying that the circumstances may have been exaggerated. Marina felt a cold fury run through her body. Then the judge looked at her. Ms. Marina, do you have anything else to add? She cleared her throat, her voice firm. I just want to say that I'm not here to argue whether he acknowledges what he did or not. I'm here because I want to close this chapter of my life. Because I want to get back the peace I lost in recent years. The judge nodded and turned to Andrew. Mr. Andrew, do you have anything to say? He leaned forward, his gaze fixed on Marina. I never thought you'd go this far. She looked at him without blinking. That's the problem. You never thought about anything but yourself. The silence in the room was suffocating. The judge reviewed the documents for a few seconds before speaking. Given that the plaintiff has presented sufficient evidence to justify the dissolution of the marriage, and considering that there is a valid restraining order in place, the divorce is granted. The sound of the gavel hitting the table echoed like a gunshot. Andrew remained motionless. Marina felt the air return to her lungs. She got up slowly without looking back. When she left the courtroom, she found Carla waiting for her with her arms crossed. And Marina let out a tired smile. It's over. Carla hugged her tightly. I knew you could do it. Marina closed her eyes and allowed herself to breathe. For the first time in a long time, she had won. But more than that, she had recovered something she thought she had lost forever. Herself. That night, when she was alone in her room, she felt that she could finally rest. There were no voices in her head, no fear in her chest, just a future that, for the first time, was completely her own. Days later, Marina felt the cold wind on her face as she looked at the house in front of her. The house where she had built a marriage, where she had thought she was creating a family, the house that had been her prison. The trap she had walked into without realizing it. It would be sold in the next few days. She had accepted the offer without thinking too much about it. She didn't want to keep anything that tied her to Andrew. The money from the sale would help her start over, move away, and get away from the ghosts that still lived within those walls. She took the keys out of her pocket and walked to the door. She didn't know why she had come back. Maybe to say goodbye. Maybe to make sure that all of this was real. She opened the door, and the dense air inside hit her. Everything was empty, with no furniture or visible memories, but she could feel them. She could see them like shadows, like ghosts floating in every corner. The sound of footsteps pulled her from her thoughts. She turned her head and saw her. Elisa was at the entrance, her arms crossed, and that same defiant expression that characterized her so well. Marina said nothing. She just looked at her, waiting. Well, I never thought you'd have the guts to come back here. Marina let out a humorless laugh. I'm not afraid anymore. Elisa squinted. Andrew is ruined. Marina looked at her without emotion. That's none of my business. You took everything. The restraining order, the divorce, the sale of the house. He's destroyed. Marina leaned her back against the wall and sighed. Why are you here? The young woman was silent for a moment. Her lips were pressed together, as if she were fighting against something inside her. I wanted to see you. And for what? Elisa crossed her arms tighter, as if trying to protect herself from something invisible. I wanted to tell you something. Marina waited. Elisa took a deep breath, and finally spoke. I'm sorry. Marina raised an eyebrow. You're sorry? Elisa nodded. I didn't think things would end this way. This way? With your brother finally showing who he really was? With me escaping from him? With both of you reaping what you sowed? Elisa clenched her jaw but didn't argue. I know I was cruel to you. Yes, you were, Marina said, but she raised a hand and interrupted her. But I don't need your forgiveness. Elisa blinked as if she hadn't expected that response. What? I don't need it. I'm not interested. Elisa's face showed a mix of surprise and confusion. I thought that hearing it would make me feel better, that it might relieve something. Marina looked at her directly. You're wrong. Why? Because thanks to you, I saw the monster I had by my side. Thanks to you, I understood what my marriage really was. Thanks to you, I was able to heal wounds I'd been carrying since I was a little girl. Elisa's face tensed. I didn't see it either at first, Marina said, moving a little closer. But now I do. And he wasn't always like that. No, but it was always in there and you brought it out. The silence that fell between them was heavy, but not uncomfortable. It was a closure, a final point. Elisa raised her head and looked at her with something akin to respect. Aren't you going to talk to him? No. Not even to say something? I have nothing else to say to him. Elisa nodded slowly. I guess that's for the best. Marina smiled, but it wasn't a kind smile. For me, it is. Elisa lowered her arms and looked around the empty house. And I always thought I would win. Marina shook her head. No, you didn't. Elisa swallowed. I think we all actually lost. Marina watched her for a moment and then nodded. Yes. The wind blew through the open windows. Elisa put her hands in her pockets and walked to the door. She stopped before leaving and turned one last time. I guess we won't see each other again. I hope not. Elisa smiled to the side. Yeah, I figured. And with that, she was gone. Marina stood there for a few more minutes, observing the empty house. She felt no nostalgia. She felt no pain. She felt peace. She turned on her heel and walked out, closing the door behind her. For the first time in years, she was ready to start over. If you liked this story, I invite you to leave a comment about what you felt while listening. And if you have gone through a similar situation of deception, I would love for you to share your valuable opinion. I would be very honored if you leave a like, share the video with a friend or family member, and subscribe to the channel. Don't miss the next surprising story that is appearing on your screen right now. We have guaranteed entertainment exclusively for you. See you in the next video.